started. Hi, Dr. Rob.
Hey, Tammy,
We've got
what's
some
happening?
questions. Oh, we've got questions
Okay,
already. So
but I'm adjusting my lighting to make it just perfect for me.
there
But
you
I'll be
go.
ready. Okay.
So I put
Yeah.
it in the answered. So check the
Okay,
answered.
great. Thank you.
This one is, I recently had a fellow 12-step group member tell me that they believed all sex addicts are also love addicts. I disagreed. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think it all comes from the same well of emptiness. So I used to think that I was just a sex addict. And then when I got sober, I started really longing for connection and longing for a relationship because that's what I'd been pushing away with the sex addiction. But then the longing turned into, well, I'm not sure who to choose because I'm so needful and so wantful. And so it was less about choosing the right person than on some level choosing any person, which is kind of like sex addiction advancing. So in a way, I always thought love addiction was just one step above sex addiction. To be honest with you, it's the indiscriminate choosing of people based on whether they like you, whether they love you, whether they want to be with you, and how connected you feel to them, rather than what you think of them and what you know about them and how you have reflected on them. So I think it all falls into the same pot of needfulness. And those of us who feel disconnected from our needs, and all of a sudden someone or some object comes up, but it's like, oh, I could meet all your needs, we can lose our balance. We lose our perspective. And then we end up going after people who really aren't healthy for us. And then when we realize it, we start punishing them because they're not the person we wanted them to be. So yeah, I do think it's not the same. It's not like having sex in the back of a closet, but in terms of using external sources to make myself feel better rather than being able to create it inside, I think they're kind of the same. I don't know. What do you think, Tammy?
Well, you've distinguished between sex addicts and love addicts before. So when they say all, first of all, when there's an always, never, there's always exceptions to every rule. But you have discerned what the difference between a love addict is and a sex addict. The other thing I'd like you to talk about a bit is I get a lot of partners who are so focused on their addict that they'll identify as a love addict. And I go, let's stop a minute, so can you talk a little bit about, what a love addict is? Let me back up.
Well, you're
So what
talking
I
about
perceive,
partners. Talk about it from the other side.
yeah, because what I perceive is they really love somebody, they really care about somebody, so they're focused on that person, not just about how it gratifies them, which I feel like a love addict is always looking, like you said, to fill the need within them. And a partner who is really trying to help a loved one is trying to make the relationship work and trying to help. So thoughts on that?
Well, I think you nailed it. I mean, when I am connected to someone, then all my actions are going to, or reactions are going to be to protect the relationship or look into the relationship or take care of the relationship and each other. But if I don't know the person all that well, or if I get kind of caught on them, but I don't really connect emotionally, then it isn't the same kind of situation. And it's much more rocky, much more difficult because I'm not seeing them for what I need. I'm sorry, I'm seeing them for what I need, not for who they are. This comes up all the time. Well, you know what? We end up talking about things, Tammy, and we never get all the questions answered. I would love to get a lot of questions answered.
Okay.
So I'm going to stop dithering and keep moving.
Okay, the next question, I put this one in the answered. I only have 7 days of sobriety and I'm having a vasectomy in the near future that will require multiple semen samples. I am worried that this could trigger me. What is the best way to navigate this, both for my recovery and my relationship?
Well, I think, Tammy, you could speak to this in terms of the alcoholic or drug addict who goes to the hospital and they need to take medication. And, their program might say, well, you don't get to take anything that's that's mood altering or might make you feel good. You're not supposed to do those kinds of drugs. And then there's a conflict between being sober and the medical aspect. So would you talk about it that way, Tammy?
Well, oh shoot, so sorry. And I think that that's exactly what the case is, that it is like this is for a completely different purpose. This is not about, fantasy and gratification and escape and everything else. This is, I'm having a vasectomy and they're requiring this for medical purposes. So if you keep the intent, and Scott did a really good talk about
Tell them
bookending.
who Scott is,
I
just
will.
in
I
case
was
I'm.
going to, if I had
Oh,
another
okay.
second. So
Sorry.
on our webinars, on Wednesday night, a few weeks ago, Scott Brassard, who also does basically what I do on different webinars, he and I were on it, and he did the topic of relapse prevention, but part of it was bookending. And so if you perhaps call your sponsor and say, I have to go do this for this purpose, and then, you know, and then I'm going to call you afterwards, and it's that processing it. And I think it will help you keep the focus. But if you look, it was in April, and it was I'll try to put it in the chat so that you can find that particular one. But I think you'll find that useful, and just understand this is an isolated situation. You're doing it for a specific reason, and that isn't, you know, oh, my recovery's all gone. So
And I want to stop on that really quickly, is that if I have spoken to someone else, you know, that is one of the key hallmarks that I'm not in addiction, because people who are in addiction go off by themselves and do things and don't tell anybody. So just the fact that you're engaging the question with other people, just the fact that you're bringing up here, I think tells me that you're aware of it, you're paying attention, you don't want to just go sneak off and do it. So, excuse me, so far as I'm concerned, all of this is recovery from the way you talk about it. So congratulations.
So the next person, I'm a betrayed partner. Is it okay for me to attend this, or is it for addicts? This is for anyone. This is open, and you'll see there are questions at the beginning. I started, and you may have joined a tad late, but I said, if you're a betrayed partner and you're asking a question, sometimes it's helpful for us to know, I'm a betrayed partner, I'm the addict, I just had discovery. So if you frame the questions, but yes, we love having you here. And I have to say that, so I'm going to say the starfish people, the starfish ornaments that Dr. Rob,
Yes, we have glass starfish ornaments.
that they're on, and they chatted to us that they're here. And so I just want to honor that they're here, and thank you so much. So anyway, I just wanted to share
Well, what
that.
Tammy's saying is that there are some folks who we've seen do a lot of healing and a lot of recovery, and it's really, I think, makes both of our hearts touch to see these folks continuing to show up years later, as a couple, doing well and reaching, testing the waters of this again. I think it's
Well,
great.
and I'm going to just add, the starfish, they were gracious and gave each of us a starfish ornament, because they view that as a relationship. If a starfish loses a leg, it regenerates.
Mm.
So it's not ever the same, but it regenerates. So they perceive their relationship as regenerating. It's never going to be the same, but it's such a hopeful message. And I have it right there, and I get to see it every day. I'd had it down here, but my cat wanted to play with it, so I have it up there. I see it every day, and I'm grateful, and I'm thrilled that you're here too. So anyway, okay, this is a great question. What's the probability of a cure for sex addiction? I had a minor in statistics, so I love mathematical questions.
Do you really? I mean, I
I
knew you
do.
had that background, but I didn't know that you could turn that into, I should have called you when I needed help with my dissertation.
You should have. So yeah,
Statistics are not my favorite thing. Okay, so where I've lost this question because it's
it's
not
in
in
the
the
answered. I
answer.
put it in the answered. What is the
No.
probability of
Yeah,
cure
yeah,
for
yeah.
sex addiction?
Oh, there at the bottom. I see. I'm so
Mhm.
sorry.
And then I think we're going to move to open next, but
So I guess it depends on what you mean cure. Can I live I am a sex addict. I started sexually acting out when I was 14, and I had issues before that, and I have, horrible family and a lot of abuse and all that stuff. I'm a perfect setup for it. Um, I don't act out anymore. I am married. I am happy in my life. I have friends. I think many of the things I was afraid of when I was actively acting out are out of my life, and many of the good things are in my life. So if I think of a cure as being the option of having a really good life with wonderful, loving people and feeling good about yourself, yes, if you consider that to be the cure. But if you're looking for a life where you'll never want to do it again or will never cross your mind, there is no cure for that. The place that addiction comes from is so far in our primitive brain. I'm pointing to the back of my head here, which we're not even conscious of once we hit about 6 or 7 years old, and our whole thinking brain, our adult brain, comes on board, and then we get all into thought, and a lot of the emotional trauma, abuse, joys, sorrows, a lot of the where our emotions in adult life come from are sitting back there where we don't always remember what happened and how it happened. But sex addiction and all addictions, in a way, are derived from some things that didn't happen early in life or did happen early in life that leaves us longing for connection and longing to fill ourselves as everyone does, but we don't want anyone to know that we need anything and we want to take care of it all by ourselves. So all I'm saying to you is that I think this is a deep-seated, I don't want to scare anybody in the room. I think it's a chronic, long-term emotional problem that can be put into remission for long periods of time with a lot of work. And sometimes it's easier and sometimes it's harder. But the idea that it's going to go away, it's like diabetes. It's not going to go away. I have it the rest of my life, but I don't have to come to harm if I'm taking the medication, but I'm never cured. So I guess the quick answer to that is none. There is no curable.
There,
Oh, one more thing. I'm sorry, Tam, I interrupted
no,
you. There are disorders like obsessive compulsive disorder or attention deficit disorder or hypermania, where people do exhibit signs of hypersexuality, compulsive sexuality, sex addiction because they have other mental health disorders. But when they are stabilized, I guess nobody's cured, but on the right medication and they're doing better, it does all go away. But that's pretty rare. Most people come because they have early emotional injuries, which, by the way, you will not remember. So if you say to me, oh, it's not, I can see the challenges you had very early in life by the challenges you now have in adult life. And I'm sorry, Tammy, I did cut you off, please.
no, I agree, but it's not just sex addiction, it's any form of addiction. The former head of ASAM, the American Society of Addiction Medicine, I was in a meeting with him one time, and he said there is no S in addiction. Addiction is addiction. So just like you were talking about that same deep well in your soul that is unfulfilled, whatever you're using to numb out, escape, it's all the same. It's all tapping into the same area. It's just what form you chose to do it. But I'm still in recovery. I never use the term I'm recovered. I'm in recovery. I will always be in recovery. Great. I hope, gratefully, one day at a time. But I live a really good life. And so I'm grateful for that. And the tools that I learned in recovery are what let me live in a connected life, with other people. So I didn't know how to do that before.
I also want to say that addiction is like playing whack-a-mole. So, I don't know if you remember those silly games, but a thing comes up and you whack it and then it comes up somewhere else. So I've had a lot of addicts I work with, male sex addicts, really find sobriety and then gain 50 pounds because the same issue was bubbling underneath, which they needed some emotional stability or escape from. So they turn to something else or they start spending money. So really the question there is what is the probability of cure for addiction? And the answer is we don't have one. We only have behavioral and spiritual and emotional things that we practice, but there are no pills for us, and there's no psychosurgery. So anyway, that's what I know.
Okay, so the next one, I'm the betrayer in my relationship. I have been in recovery and sober for just over a year. I recently took the sexual dependency inventory with my CSAT therapist. One of my biggest issues is that I blow through boundaries like a tornado in a mobile home park. That's a good visual. What materials, books, or advice would you give to me to help me understand and respect boundaries?
Well, the thing is, I don't know what that means for that person. So for me, blowing past boundaries could be I'm committed to having dinner at 6 o'clock every night with my partner, but I always have an excuse why I still need to be on the computer. So I completely screw up his boundaries with me and he gets mad. Boundaries can also be I promise if I'm not sexually acting out, I'm not going to also spend, I'm not going to also do this or that, I'm not going to hit someone. So we really don't, well, I don't know, Tammy may have a better idea, but I don't know what kind of boundaries they blow through, which makes it, oh, I love the description, which makes it hard to understand what they're asking. Do you have a thought?
Well, and I was actually taking it from the other way. I blow through boundaries. I was thinking you're blowing through your partner's boundaries because you're in a relationship. So are you blowing through your partner's
Oh,
boundaries? And I don't know. One of the things I think would be super helpful, Dr. Rob wrote a book called Out of the Doghouse, and that's about rebuilding trust. So if it's the partner boundaries you're blowing through, I would encourage you to do that. Otherwise, that the having your 3-circle plan, having your relapse plan, because your boundaries, there's an outer boundary, there's a middle boundary, and there's an inner boundary. If you're going into your inner boundary, you aren't in recovery for a year if you're blowing through those. So I guess I don't know. You may want to clarify which form of boundaries you're looking to quit blowing through. So
Let's keep moving.
Okay, I'm going to put this one in the answered, and then I think you should be able to switch to the open.
You keep saying
Hi,
that, but then we
I
don't
know,
switch.
I
And then,
know.
so just
After
let.
this one is at 5:03, and I think you were on by then. So, hi, male addict here. I've been married for many years, and I've acted out most of those years. Infidelity, porn. I travel for my job and acted out mainly on the road. I have disclosed to my wife. My wife suffers from panic attacks now when I leave home for work. I'm 62 and not ready to retire. I promise not to stay overnight anymore. What else can we do?
Well, I have a few ideas, but Tammy, why don't you give it a start if you like?
I'm
You
glad you're
can go
here.
wild,
I was
or
gonna say, well, no, I'm glad you're here, but like I hear, I disclosed to my wife. I don't hear there was a therapeutic disclosure. I don't hear, what is your recovery plan? What is your safety plan? Who is your sponsor? What are you doing to be different? Because if it's just she's keeping you locked up in the house, hoping that you'll be different, that hasn't been successful. Trust me, over COVID, we've had lots of clients come to the seeking integrity. It doesn't work. So I think it's more, what is your overall recovery plan? And I hope and pray she has support, from a good therapist, because if what I think happened, that you just told her everything, no wonder she's suffering from panic attacks. Oh my gosh, that's just, trauma, trauma, trauma. So thoughts, Dr. Rob?
yeah, I mean, you just basically made a volcano erupt in your backyard, and every once in a while you leave your wife and there's an earthquake. I mean, there's no way she couldn't keep reacting. So when you leave home, the feelings come up for her of everything that's already happened, and she's convinced no matter what you say that you're at it again because you're not there. And so she completely goes into panic mode because something is going on that's important to her that she can't control, and it's out of control. So I do want to, you are responsible. So let's take a step back. um, I agree with Tammy. I don't hear anything about we're getting help, to put it in the most basic way. And I think there's a bigger issue here than even I am wanting to not act out in the road, or my wife this and that. Your wife's having panic attacks. Have she seen a psychiatrist? Have you gone to a mental health therapist? Have you? And those don't come from somewhere. Those have to do with the dynamics of the relationship. She may have had them when she was younger, whatever, but here it is again. And it's because it's things that are going on between you. And maybe it has to do with the fact that she found out all this information without her own therapist, without her own support. Now she's walking around with everything you've told her. By the way, we feel a lot better when we tell someone, oh, I finally got off my chest. And then we look at our partners. I've had people say they don't seem very happy considering how many times they asked. And you have to understand how devastated they are by what we tell them. And that alone, plus you're leaving all the time. I'm surprised she's not in a rubber room. I have some more thoughts, but Tammy, do you want to dive in there?
I hope that you, like, I'm glad you're here, but Dr. Rob doing this once a week is not enough. So what is the whole plan? I think that's really critical for you to find. But yes, getting your wife getting support, huge, huge. She needs that. So
And I
okay.
want to answer. I want to answer the question that is asked in here. Um, Here are your options. Um, I don't know about the porn part. I would imagine I'd put some kind of tracker on my phone so that my sponsor or someone in my life could track everything that I use on my. There are trackers where you can put the software on your phone and it will report to a therapist or a sponsor. I wouldn't suggest your wife. Every single thing you type online, so that someone else knows. By the way, in the beginning, it could be your wife in the first couple of months. Actually, she needs to know exactly what you're doing online or not. And if it's not that you go around the world and act out, she could GPS track you and make sure, between tying up your porn and making sure you stay in the hotel room at night. But that doesn't keep anyone from coming to your room. So here's your only option. She has to go with you. And your wife can't go with you, then you can't go, because you say, I acted out. I travel for my job and I acted out on the road. I'm not ready to retire. Well, I would say there are many things you can do other than retire. And how old are you? 62. You can have a whole other profession if you want. However, it needs to be a profession that evolves around staying home. And if you want to ever make this woman feel safe with you, even no matter how well it goes in the beginning, and Tammy and I can talk about therapy and treatment centers and all the things that might be useful for you. But the bottom line is, you ever want to make this woman feel safe, Stop leaving her over and over again and going back to the same people and places that she fantasizes you were going to before. It's actually abusive to her. It's like she has a cut and you're constantly banging it, all the time. It's just never going to heal, and that's on you. So Tammy?
No,
Oh no, you already
yeah,
answered that.
I did. Next question, and we're in the open. I'm a betrayed partner wife. What is the way to deal my negative or obsessive thoughts and triggers from my husband's sexual betrayal and its intimacy fear? What is the best mindset to handle my bitterness towards my mother-in-law for her enmeshment, dominance, and damages done to our marriage and intimacy as an emotional wife to my husband? What is the best boundary model for us to, as a team, or my husband alone, to set with his mother-in-law? Thanks. That's a lot of questions.
So that's not one question.
No, that's a lot of questions.
But let's answer it backwards.
Yes.
So boundary model for us to use as a team or my husband alone. Because your husband has acted out, this whole first year or so is about creating safety for you so that you can feel like bad things aren't going to happen. You can start to rely on your partner. So if you don't feel comfortable spending 4th of July weekend with your mother-in-law, and you don't feel comfortable with you staying home with kids or whatever, and your spouse goes to his mom's house for 4th of July, you can say, I need to feel safe, and I'd rather you didn't do that. I'd rather you didn't come by. I'd rather she didn't come by. Or my favorite, which is we're going to go visit one morning, we're going to have some brunch, then we're going to leave and stay at a hotel, and then we're going to come back the next day and have dinner. This is about, first of all, the other thing is, what is your husband willing to do? Because this cannot be well, you got to do this and you got to do that, because he will resent that and he won't listen. If he doesn't have empathy for you, if he doesn't understand what he's put you through or what this reminds you of, or it's going to be much harder. He's just going to think you're giving a hard time because you don't like his mom, Tammy, anything else about that? And then we'll talk about obsessive thoughts.
I put in the chat some When He's Married to Mom and Silently Seduced by Dr. Ken Adams, who did a podcast with Dr. Rob, and I gave the link to the podcast on the chat as well. Huge for both of you. So then go ahead.
Yeah, I think this person said, what is the best mindset to handle my bitterness toward my mother-in-law for enmeshing him? I think that's misplaced. I think it's like being angry at the other woman when the person you're really angry at is right next to you. I don't think your mother-in-law, as I say all the time, and believe me, I had profound trauma growing up. My way of looking at that has been the same for many years, which is those people did the absolute best they could, and it really wasn't what I needed. And I've spent the rest of my life trying to get what I need and figure out what I need and make it happen in healthier ways. But I'm on the planet. I'm still here at 60 years old and eating and sleeping and loving. So they got me far enough. And I would say that about parents. Any of us who are here and can eat and chew gum at the same time, they got us far enough. They got us far enough to where we could find the love, the family, and the support that we need in adult life. If they couldn't provide it, at least they gave us enough to not be in a rubber room. So I would give it to your mother-in-law for having done the best she could to love her son. And you don't know what her life history is about. You don't know whether she was molested or what happened to her in childhood, but I would remove the focus from her, and I would allow myself a lot more feelings about your feelings of betrayal. And then you might get past your obsessive thoughts. You might just get so furious that you might start to act in some way on it. If this man is sleeping in your bed, you want to talk about boundaries? I have concern. Maybe, when was the last time you spent 2 weeks with him on the couch, or whatever that is? So by the way, when people are enmeshed with their mother-in-laws, guess who's also is enmeshed? It's the couple. So he's drawn you in, you've gotten there. And the question is, how are we enmeshed? Not what is wrong with his mother 30 years ago, but how are we caught up in each other's lives? That is unhealthy. That's where I go with that.
And I know it's really complicated, and I hate what happens, and it's so not fair to the kiddos. And it happens all the time, and it continues to happen. However, the empathy that if I can just take a step back and go, you know, his mom must have been very wounded in order to do that, like that she needed to make her son, you know, into something else that he wasn't supposed to be, that she couldn't parent him, you know, in the way that he needed. There's
Mhm.
another book, Neglect the Silent Abuser, and it just, I think it's
And that's
by
also
Enid
a
Gray.
podcast.
Yes. And it's a
That's also a
podcast
podcast.
by, yes. And I think, you know, if you can just take a step back and go, wow, these are really broken and hurt people. And so rather than having rage and anger and obsessing about that, you know, just changing the lens a little bit. It doesn't fix everything. It still happened. It still is
Mhm.
bad, but it's like, okay, that's a human that was really hurt. And I can only imagine, and there weren't resources. You have resources. There's a book. I mean, there's, you know, there are resources. There's, you know, Dr. Ken Adams does a weekend workshop for mother enmeshed men. It's brilliant, and it's really, you know, it starts shifting things. That may be something that's useful for you as a couple. So, but just
I
having
wanted
the
to
lens of she's really broken. She's broke. How could he not? You know, so you know, it's far more complicated.
I just wanted a very personal question of what is the way to deal with my negative or obsessive thoughts and triggers. First of all, you have to acknowledge that that's normal. And as I say to every spouse I've ever worked with, crazy is your new normal. You're going to want to wake up in the morning and think what you have to worry about is whether you have a mask at home or not. And you know what you have to worry about is your whole life has been ruined. I mean, if you allow yourself to understand and take in that very little about what you see going on around you is or isn't true, that what you thought to be the past may or may not be true, what you, any kind of future you might have, who knows? You've been living with lies for such a long time. I think your norm would be obsessive thoughts. And the only thing I would ask you to do is we have a website. It's free. Okay, I'll say that up front. It's free. It's called sexandrelationshiphealing.com. It's where we are right now. And we run, God, we don't run, we have volunteer therapists who are kind enough to run, I don't know, 3 or 4 portrayed partners groups every week. And I think to be in a group of other women who, some of them will be not as far along as you are and just complete mess. Some of them will be really in themselves and feeling fierce and connected. And, you know, it's really good for you to understand and feel that you're not alone. I can't tell you what that will mean. And if you're not in some kind of therapy, you know, I would also suggest it. I hate to take up more time, but I do want to double. I love that you said that, Tammy. Your empathy and compassion are a beautiful thing because, you know, my mother was mentally ill. She needed me to be part of herself that she couldn't be. She needed me to be that. But there wasn't much focus on who I was. Can I blame her for being chronically mentally ill and in and out of hospitals? I could, but it doesn't help my life today. I do better with empathy. And for as long as she was on the planet, I tried to be a very good son. By the way, Tam, did you know my mom passed on Mother's Day?
I did.
Hey, what was she thinking? It
One
was a
more
long time ago.
reminder. Yeah. Okay, I am an addict in recovery. Discovery has happened as well as formal disclosure with my therapist and her therapist. I, however, do not have an accountability partner or much of a support system yet, as my partner is not comfortable with me reaching out and communicating with people she doesn't know. Any advice on how to build a support system from these groups and other therapy groups with her being comfortable with me reaching out to people she hasn't met or doesn't know?
I mean, that's a darn starter question for you for sure.
Well, it's just one of those where I just go, wow, like I would invite her to check out support groups for her and understand how important they are. We cannot heal our addiction in isolation. Dr. Rob has talked, the opposite of addiction is healthy attachment. And so learning to do life and getting, the reason you got where you were was because you weren't doing life particularly well. So having other people who have been down the path, just like what Dr. Rob was saying a minute ago, of other partners that are down the path further than you, and they can help, guide you on the path. This is what we do. You not having an accountability partner, please tell me your partner is not your accountability partner. You need someone to be accountable to. I started the evening off with the book ending. That's like, I'm going into a difficult situation. I'm going to call my sponsor. I'm going to do whatever, it back before COVID, a company party, and then I'm going to call my sponsor afterwards, whatever. But yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know. I really hope she's listening, and I hope she engages with the other materials on this site, because otherwise, I quite frankly am concerned for you, because this is not from the beginning of AA, which is the genesis of all of these. It was they had to be with other people that were like them. It's not that they all went gallivanting off and got drunk together. It was like they stayed sober together. That was the point. So, and thank goodness my 12 steps are back in person. I've actually had the opportunity to go to my 12 step meetings and sit with other people, and like, it's just so good. So I'm grateful. Anyway, I'll shut up.
Wait, I want to answer. So a couple of things about this. First of all, you said that you've had formal disclosure with 2 therapists. So you already have a system to help you guys work through this. And the issue you're dealing with is one of boundaries. What is the boundary? What do I need for myself to recovery? And what is the boundary my spouse is asking? And do they diverge? And in this case, they do diverge. And as Tammy's saying, you have to go. This isn't an option. You have to get support, or you will end up back where you were. And the problem for your wife is she's afraid. And one of the defenses, this is a therapy word, one of the defenses we have against fear is anger, and control. We get very controlling and angry in order to cover up how every time you walk out that door, she's afraid. Every time you get on that phone, she's afraid. And so she, as many spouses want to do, who are you talking to? What are you talking? I want you to call me after. Basically they're asking for accountability, but really they're controlling, because they just think, because everything is so out of control. So I guess I wanted to add also that you see us doing here tonight. There are at least, I think, a couple of groups we do on sex and relationship healing during the month that are for couples. I'm on In the Rooms every Friday night. That's in other words, you can start off, if you like, by bringing her into environments like this and letting her hear these folks and get to see some of their faces, not in this group, but on one of the others. I have 160 people in front of me. I think what she'll identify with is their stories and what they're going through. And one of the reasons that we really encourage everyone to get support, therapy, or group or 12-step, it's to normalize. That's the word, to normalize. When I was acting out, despite all the people I had sex with, I thought I was the only one in the world. Like, I thought I was the only one who had this problem, and the only one who was doing the kinds of things I had, and the only one who had to hate themselves the way I did because of the way I was doing what I was doing sexually. And that one of the first things about going to the 12-step program, and one of the things that kept me there was, oh, I'm not the only one. And they're talking about it like they're talking about the weather, and they really want to get well, and they have a plan, and they're not hitting on each other, and then I never left, because it was a completely different way of relating for a very different purpose than how I'd been out there relating, but it still met the same needs. So as Tammy said, we'd never recover alone, because addiction is a disease of isolation. If you think about what we do with addicts when we bring them into a treatment center, seeking integrity, for example, we take people who are isolated and we bring them together. And when you have some mentally ill homeless person on the street and they're completely out of it, the first thing we do is we clean them up and we bring them into the institution with other people. We are curative, and we need to be in community for this kind of healing. And your wife is going to have to deal with, not in a mean way, with a loving way, she's going to have to tolerate her fear and her desire to control in this particular area. By the way, she can GPS track you. So you go to the meeting, you come back from the meeting, she knows exactly where you went. There are ways to make her feel more safe. Anyway.
Yeah, and hopefully she starts going to the support for partners, so I think that helps to start to understand, oh, this is really helpful. So, but
I love the
okay.
next question. I really want to answer this question.
Yeah. Is it okay for an addict to go to therapeutic massage if they acted out in massage parlors in the past?
So that'd be a no.
I know, I
That'd
was
be a
like, this is
flat,
a really
that'd be a
simple
no.
one. Yeah.
That'd be flat out no.
So are SAs able to tell fantasy from reality?
That'd be a yes and no. You could look at addiction like being sane some of the time and insane some of the other time. And the insane is actually neurochemical. A drug addict will start thinking about using the drugs and getting the drugs, and then their heart pounds faster and they start fantasizing about it, and then they call their dealer, and all of that is a neurochemical. Their heart would be pounding there. And it's the same for us. We disappear into that behavior. And when at that point we are so driven by adrenaline and our endorphins that it's kind of like being in a catastrophe, where you just become single-minded, like I got to get out of this building. The adrenaline just leaves us focusing on the drugs or the sex and we push out, and that pushes out all other thoughts about what about my kids, what about my family, what about what I promised. All that is a dim background to the intensity of wanting to go do what we do. And that's the same for any addict for the most part. So we would say the insanity or the fantasy is going and doing something that we know isn't good for us, that we've told ourselves we're not going to do again, that we've seen cause harm in the past and seen make our lives unproductive, and yet there we are doing it. The fantasy is wrapped up inside of there, that somehow this is going to fix me, fix that. So a long-handed answer to your question is, I think if I were married to you, I would be in complete awareness of what I'd done when I was with you and what I'd done when I wasn't with you, and I would be holding secrets and all that. However, if I left this evening to go see a sex worker, I would be so driven, so focused, so engaged in the idea of it, the excitement about it, not just even the sex, but the idea of being able to intently focus on something that has pleasure, that you would never cross my mind. And this is other ways where a lot of spouses say, how could you love me and do this? We do love you and we do that because we're able to completely or near completely compartmentalize what we're doing in our head. Now, when we're with you, we can't compartmentalize it. We know what we've done and we know we're going to keep it from you. So we're compartmentalizing from you, but we see the whole picture. But when we got out there, let me try a different way. I have the sweetest dog in the world. He cuddles. He's 90 pounds of love, and he's a bulldog, and he drools and he smells and he farts, and I just love all of that. And he will cuddle with us and lie on the bed. He's just great. But if we go for a walk and there's a dog that's under 15 pounds, he will try to murder it. And this loving dog that I have, and his eyes bulge out and he gets in that crouch, he is ready to go murder that little dog. Now, could you say that my dog is not able to tell fantasy from reality? The reality is that in that moment, that's all he can smell, that's all he can see, that's all he can do, and everything else goes away, and he's so excited about it. And later on, he might taste the dead dog in his mouth and say, yeah, I remember doing that. I'm going a little far here, but the point is, when you're in that kind of intensity and focus, everything else fades away. And it could be that I'm not, and you could say I'm not in reality at that moment.
So I just want to say Dozer has not murdered dogs. He has an intent to want to do that, but he has not done that. So
he's injured a few. He's injured a few.
Why are intimacy issues always related to female, and sex cannot be related to not having male friendships where one can be vulnerable or bond?
Okay, well, I don't even know where to start that, but do you mind if I go pee while you answer this question, Tammy?
Thanks for leaving me a real.
No, I'll turn off the mic. I think what our guys struggle with at seeking integrity, so you know that you understand the question. I'll be right back.
Yeah. Okay, so why are intimacy issues always, first of all, anytime, I said it a little bit earlier, always and nevers are not helpful. So things are not always related to female and sex, because there are many heterosexual men who have sex with men. So and not related to not having male friendships. Yes, absolutely. It's not having healthy attachments. I said earlier too, addiction is the opposite of addiction is healthy attachment. Why we have a treatment program for men, and Dr. Rob talked about it a bit ago. They heal in community. So coming together, sharing, it's the same as, well, it's not the same, but like in 12-step, I'm sitting there and I'm listening to these stories and I'm relating male or female, to that. But intimacy disorders, it isn't whether it's male or female. It really is, and it's not even about sex. And intimacy isn't sex. There's a whole bunch of people who have sex that have no intimacy. So it's about the inability to be able to be vulnerable, to be able to be real, to not be compartmentalized. Like Dr. Rob was saying, if I've got all these compartments, they can't touch, they can't know about each other, and I've got to keep all these compartments separate. So nobody gets to really know who I really am. And as an addict, I always knew for sure that if people really found out who I really was, they would hate me, and so being willing to be vulnerable is letting all the pieces come together as messy as they are, but showing people what I'm really, who I really am. So
Thanks, Tammy. I do want to, I'm thinking about, this is a prejudice question, because men have great intimacy and men can be really connected. And I'm sorry if the men in your life have not been intimate with you, but I know now most of the men that I would say are more aware in this way. They've looked at themselves, they've worked on themselves, or they had tremendously empathic and engaged parents. I know many friends of mine have raised their sons to really understand who women are and what they need and how to be respectful and all those things. Um, so I disagree with the whole statement that men are intimate, or those are the, or intimacy always comes up with women. What we talk about around here is that women are always craving intimacy and men don't seem to know how to give it. And that's true. We're not necessarily as well trained, many of us, in revealing ourselves. And part of being a man is to protect yourself, to be one up, to be competitive, to guard your, this is testosterone and this is what it does to us. But on the other hand, when we're asked to be more gentle, more subtle, more, we're not as good at that. And that doesn't mean we can't do it. It just means we're a little more guarded. And a lot of times we have to be taught. Sometimes I think as partners, you expect, or anybody would, well, of course they understand how to be empathic. Of course why aren't they having empathy? Maybe they never learned, so a lot of times, well, all the guys at Seeking Integrity, we talk about what intimacy is. And do you want me to say that, Tammy? Yes, I will. I have a few minutes. So I had a doctor that was intimate with me recently, and that sounds like a completely awful statement, but it was a wonderful thing. I went to a doctor, I had a problem with my elbow or whatever it was. And the doctor knew that I had I was a sexologist, that, this is my area of expertise. And he said, do you mind if I ask you a question? And I said, no, great. And he was working on my elbow. And he said, I'm 60 and my wife is 40, and I'm beginning to feel like, what if I can't keep up with her? And, what should I do about that? And, sometimes you feel like people are breaking your boundaries, or they're using you, whatever. But I just thought, oh, what a sweet man. How lovely that he lowered his defenses and let me in by sharing his vulnerability. I could have embarrassed him. I could have shamed him. I could have said, I'm sorry, I don't speak about that. We had a nice little discussion about testosterone and various things, and maybe a little bit of self-doubt he didn't need to have, because love is more than sex, but when you're 60 and they're 40, you think, we had a nice talk about that. But the point is that I will go see that doctor forever, because he understood how to be intimate. And all he did, it was very simple, was he revealed a part of himself to me that left me in a position where I could have hurt him or let him down or abandoned him. And of course, if you know how to be intimate, you move toward that. So my response is, I'm glad to talk to you about that. And it's cool that you asked. And, so intimacy has nothing to do with sex, although intimate sex can be intimate. Intimacy has to do with being known, with revealing yourself. And by the way, if you're an active addict, you can't be intimate, because that means because being an active addict by definition means that I have secrets and I'm compartmentalizing myself. So when I'm supposed to come to you and be vulnerable and open, I know I'm keeping secrets. And so I'm not really being intimate with you. This is one of the reasons that we do disclosure, is because in a professional way, we don't believe that a couple can be intimate unless all of the crap is cleared off the table. And so anyway, I don't agree. I think that also, I'll say this too, men, I don't know if you've noticed, men and women relate differently. We are very different. Despite what feminism may have taught you in the 90s, we have different brains, we have different hormones, we have different needs, and we are different. And, women are, for the most part, more empathic, more compassionate, more focused on community building. Men are often more aggressive, more competitive, more I'll go at my own, In fact, I think we temper each other quite well in that way. So, so I'm not even sure what that question was, but we sure answered it in a lot of ways.
we did. And I just want to go one more layer, because you said addiction, and I think it's any addict, and I think female addicts, same thing. So regardless of what whack-a-mole form of addiction you have, it's intimacy disorder. So okay.
Well, I want to add to that. addiction by its very nature means I'm lying, lying, lying. And many times people who are addicts who came from families who were lying, 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 like everything's fine, or there's no problem, or just go to your room. Or so, our first instinct is not to be intimate and open up with you if we're a little scared, like, where did that go? And, where'd your cookie jar go? When you move toward us, we kind of turn into that little kid, and then we often will withdraw because it's too scary to open up. We are actually, for all the sex we have and all the crazy relationships we sex and love addicts have, we're actually intimacy avoidant. You can have sex with 1,000 people and have no intimacy, trust me. But letting yourself be known by one person in a way that they might, where you're vulnerable, a lot more, that's where the intimacy is.
How to stop feeling stuck and hopeless when our addict partner is not too committed to his recovery, or sometimes he's doing his work and other times he's slacking and minimizing things and doesn't think he needs to do all the things required in recovery.
Well, I would say in a gentle way that I didn't hear anything about you in that statement. And while observing, I think while you watch so closely, did he do this? Did he do that? Has he, I think you can lose yourself in there. And some of the stuck and hopeless feeling may not be about what you want him to do or what you don't want her to do, but you'll feel stuck in your own life watching out after this man. And so, either you trust the process or you don't. Either he's really working on this or half-assed working on this or not working on it at all, or you don't really know. You just see the behavior, but you don't know what it really means. Go do something for yourself. Hang out with some girlfriends. You can go back out there, go get, whatever, you can get a massage, whatever, go play whatever it is you play, or whatever is sing, or whatever you enjoy doing out in the world. If you spend your time with your head over his shoulder, you're going to feel stuck and hopeless. Now, you can say, nothing wrong with saying, I'm not comfortable with how this is going, and this doesn't meet my expectations for our relationship. And if I don't see you doing XYZ, I'm not sure this is going to make it, or whatever you want to say. But that doesn't mean you're looking over his shoulder every 10 minutes to see he's doing it, because that turns you from a wife or a lover into a mother or a parole officer. We can really want people to change. Lord knows I've tried to change some people I really love just so I could keep loving them, and they would not change. People are who they are, and he is either going to get this or get this on the level he gets it, or not get it at all. But you're not going to be able to see him clearly at all if your focus is, you won't see the forest for the trees, is guess what I'm saying. Tammy, I didn't mean to insult this person, but I wonder if you have any thoughts.
I was thinking similarly that when all the focus, it's all on this person, and so your life has become as small as his became with the addiction, because you have to be focused on that. So, but when you said the massage, I was like, you can get a massage. The person that used to act out with massages can't, but you can get a massage. But yeah, doing the things that are, that are meaningful and helpful in your life. And what other connections? Like I love Dr. Rob talked about setting a healthy boundary. This is not, communicating. This is not working for me in this way. Here's what I'm looking to see. And if not, then this is the consequence that you can live with. Don't make boundaries and threaten things that aren't going to happen, because then the addict will just push right on over that. But you do you, or do something for you, completely away from him. Hopefully multiple things.
I've seen this be helpful for couples. It doesn't have to be a controlling fight. Tammy was sort of touching on this. If it were me, I would put a calendar on the refrigerator, and like a literal calendar, not a virtual calendar. And I would sit with my spouse and say, I probably have to do something every day for my healing. What do you think? Here's my list of things. What do you think I could do this day or that day? And then you can begin to see, oh, there is some consistency. He is doing this, or he is doing, or she is. I think just having it right there on the refrigerator. I tell every guy who goes through treatment, it's like, put your treatment, I don't know if I want to show my spouse this, put it on the fridge. It's so reassuring to a spouse to see, oh, they're supposed to be in a meeting. Oh, there they are in that meeting online. Every time that happens, you rebuild trust. Every time you resent doing something or say, I don't really want to do that, or put it off, or don't do it, what's the opposite of rebuilding trust?
Losing trust.
Losing. Thank you. Thank you, Tammy.
Going down the same place that you were before. So,
right.
Well, but I just thought, like this is the stuff that makes me want to bang my head on the desk when he doesn't think he needs to do things that are required in recovery. Going back to what the person said earlier, that they were not connected with other people in recovery. Our best thinking gets us into this point. So when the addict is thinking and he's not talking to his sponsor, not talking to his therapist, not talking about what is needed, then this is the kind of stuff that happens, is like, oh, I think, well, that's a rocky road. How's that? And not ice cream. Okay. I am the sex addict in my relationship, gay male relationship of nearly 10 years, 6 of which I was acting out, then confronted 3+ years ago, and have been in therapy since. I have no desire to act out outside of my relationship, but I am struggling with intimacy with my partner for the last 6 months at least. I don't know how to remedy this. I also am not very good at relaying that my desire and interest is for him, and I'm just dealing with emotional, psychological stuff. It's hurting our relationship, and it's very unfair towards him. Many days I feel overwhelmed by work-life balance, learning about myself, therapy, and meetings, that I feel drained. Is there anything I can do or focus on to help myself and my partner along this journey? Wow, that's a lot. And thank you for sharing that. That's a lot of
Thoughtful.
self-awareness too. Yeah.
Well, at the heart of this problem, I think, is sex. The word wasn't mentioned, but you said I'm not good at relaying my desire and that my interest is for him. I get caught up in my head. We haven't been intimate, and I think in this case, this probably means physical intimacy. So I understand this completely, I understand it personally, and I certainly understand it from a recovery perspective. And I don't know if this is the answer for you, but this is how I think about this. As sex addicts, when we are active in our addiction, we are actively avoiding intimacy because we are not at all intimately engaged with those people. And then we get in intimate relationships and we actively avoid intimacy with our partners because, we kind of give them a mixed message and all of that. And sex really comes down to, one of the most, now here's something I can say about sex and intimacy. It is between two people who have a connection in a relationship. It can be one of the most intimate things that we do together. Strangers, not so much. But the real question about that I wanted to answer, hold on, is about how to have sex with him. So I was going to type this in, but I couldn't type and talk. I don't know. I just am saying this to you. And I would write this down. If you're an addict, write this down. It's a really good thing to think about. Addicts seek intensity when what they want is intimacy. Or you could say addicts mistake intimacy for intensity or intensity for intimacy. But the bottom line is what I'm saying is this. If I'm used to a lot of new bodies and a lot of new arms and a lot of new shoulders, yeah, thank you, Tammy, and and a lot of new stairs in wherever I'm cruising people, or a lot of new hooking up, that's a forever new experience. And it's, it could be good, could be bad, could be this, but there's always what am I going to get? What am I going to unwrap? It's like Christmas every day. which person do I get to unwrap? And your partner can never be that. You've seen that butt before. You've heard him fart before. You've seen him gain 10 pounds and be mean to that, so who he is. He's not the mystery person who you can say, ooh, that would be fun. And when we are really with someone, that's where the fear of intimacy comes up, and that's when we move away. So the idea that I'm going to feel the same way and I'm going to be excited in the same way and want to move toward my partner in the same way that I did when I was sexually acting out, that's never going to happen, because that's intensity based. It comes from a different part of the brain. But if I am willing, not horny, but willing, here's another one to write down, Tammy, if you don't mind. Recovery means, for the couple, replacing horniness with willingness. So sexual recovery for a couple means replacing, yes, it basically replacing intensity with intimacy, or horniness to willingness. And what that means is that I don't expect that I'm going to look at my partner and feel that sense of excitement and amazement. And I'm not going to wait for them to get out of the shower. And, I already know that. So to expect me to want to be sexual based on what I'm seeing, men are very visual or something new, that's not going to happen. So and that's healthy. That's how, no offense to Tammy or I, but I bet, 20 years of marriage, you don't just say, woo, can't get, you can't wait for some of that. So sorry, I don't mean to embarrass you, Tammy.
And it's 30
So,
years, so it's even longer. So,
but the point is that what I can do as a sex addict, and this is what I do, knowing my issues, is I will lie down with my spouse and we'll massage each other's shoulders, or we'll stroke each other's, well, I would say hair, but we don't do that. We might go in the shower and rub each other down with oil. We might, in other words, we might kiss each other. We might embrace each other, and oh my, I got excited, and oh gee, we had sex. You didn't expect it to happen. You weren't really thinking it was going to happen. And had you had the choice, you would rather have read a book. But once it started, it became wonderful, not out of the intention to do it, because it's going to be amazing and great and powerful, but with the intention of wanting to see the person you love experience pleasure and wanting to play. So I think for some of us, the arousal is almost like a surprise, like an afterthought. If we go into it with that and looking for that in the first place, we're going to run from it. We are intimacy avoidant. We don't necessarily run to our partners who we've been with for a while and can't wait to have sex with them. We avoid them. We'd rather read the paper. And that's when they think, well, don't you love me? Don't you care about me? Why are you so distant? It's because I'm terrified of you, because you're the person who could really let me down and really hurt me. And so I don't only want to let you get so close to me. And that is the wall that every addict has to break down when we get sober, is how do I create intimacy and loving physical and spiritual sexuality with my partner once all of this is behind us. Yeah, that was a long speech, Tammy.
that was a great answer. No, I just was thinking Dr. David talks about sensate focused, and Masters and Johnson wrote the book on that, and you can learn more, but it is being willing. So, okay, next question. I'm the betrayer in the relationship. Many times I have thought I'm ready for change, but when I look back, I realize that I was not, and put in the bare minimum thinking I was recovering. How would you recommend fanning your own flame for your desire to recover and get better?
Well, good luck with that. I don't think there's any way. No, let me.
No, go ahead.
I meant that. Like, good luck with that. I don't think you can fan your own flame. I think you take the actions first and the rest will follow. So if you're looking to look at that, I can't wait to get excited about those meetings. And when am I really going to want to go to therapy twice a week? That ain't going to happen. But by doing those things, you will begin to feel better about yourself, and you work your way into wanting to be there. Tam and I have talked about, sometimes when I'll go to 12-step meeting, I don't even hear what they're saying. It's like being in a meditation. I just have the feeling of it, the noise, it takes me into a place that I can think more clearly. Sometimes I listen, sometimes I don't. But I went from have to be there to am learning things here to want to be there. And so, it sounds to me like, I don't know, like you're kind of resisting the journey, or you're missing out on the journey, or you know what it is? It's like every addict. You're looking for something outside of you to motivate you. And unfortunately, I'll tell you what the fanning of the flame is, and this is the absolute truth. Every man who comes to seeking integrity for treatment got there because they're in trouble. They're in trouble with their spouse. They're in trouble with the law. They're in trouble. Their kids found something. They couldn't see their grandkids, and something happened. And in 25 years of delivering treatment, I've only seen about 8 or 10 people who did not who came to treatment for any reason, but then they were in trouble. So very, very few of us, maybe a tiny percent of us, go to therapy or treatment because we want to be a better person. Our primary initial motivation is fear of losing something that we just realized was so important to us that we'll do anything to get better. I don't know what your thing is or what you have to lose, but a recovery is a thought or an idea, or maybe I'll have better dates if I start doing this, or, that's not how it works. It's a lifestyle change. For sure. It's not just how you have sex. And so, Tammy, we're going to have to stop with this one. So do you have a comment? I know you thought I was going to say something else. You were like,
no, we got to the same place, but it was like, you have to until you want to. And so it's act your way into good living, because I hear all the time from people, sometimes addicts, but often partners. And all I hear is, yeah, he's barely checking off the boxes. Oh, if I go to this therapist for 50 minutes a week, I'm doing that. If I go to one meeting a week, I'm doing that. And you know what? You never get the benefit of recovery if you're barely checking off the stuff. So, how you fan the flame is you get the benefits of what recovery brings us. It's the healthy connections. We talk often about the inner circle is the stuff to avoid, the middle circle is the stuff that's, oh, it's a danger zone, the outer circle, the biggest circle, is the cool stuff that is all about life that we have forgotten about when we're all focused on our inner circle. And oh, we want to do this and we don't want to give this up, but we're missing the good stuff, we're missing all the good stuff. So what will fan your flame for recovery is getting recovery. If you engage with your recovery with the same energy that you did your addiction, you're going to be great, and your flame is going to be fanned. So that's my thought.
And I just want to end by saying, I hope that you don't have to have the kind of crisis that pushes you into treatment because you were sitting around waiting for some flame to fan. So, pardon me. Thank you so much, Tammy. I think we had a good night. To you folks
We
who didn't
did.
catch
Yeah.
us,
Go ahead.
I'm on intherooms.com. I volunteer for them every Friday night at 6. I have like 150 people, and there are so many groups and things on here that are free on sex and relationship healing. And don't forget the podcast, Sex, Love, and Addiction. I think we're almost at 7,000 downloads, 700,000.
No,
You'll
you're
tell me.
over 700,000. Last I
Okay.
checked, it was like 720,000, and I haven't checked in a bit. So.
Okay. Well, if you want to be the 27,000th and one, we would
Yeah.
really appreciate that. See you later.
Okay. Bye.